You come to Lansing to have a conversation about healthcare and the innovation that could be had within that healthcare system at a very interesting time because the entire nation is talking about healthcare. But let's talk specifically about the Council for American Medical Innovation, because in listening to you talk today, you brought up some very interesting statistics about how it's not just about better quality of life from healthcare, but it also is very much about the economics for a state like Michigan.
It has many, many goals that are really important. First of all, as you said, we can improve people's lives if we can find answers, better answers to many of the dread diseases that people still have to suffer with. Secondly, we can save healthcare costs, and this is an important point in this healthcare debate. You know, if we could just delay the onset of Alzheimer's by an average of 3 years, we'd save trillions of dollars. We'd empty out half the nursing homes in the country. It would just be a marvelous efficiency in our healthcare system. Finally, it's jobs, it's economics. Healthcare writ large is the biggest employer in the United States. It's the biggest employer in the state of Michigan. It's the biggest employer in St. Louis, where I'm from, or any other town you want to mention. So it is a huge generator of jobs, good paying jobs. And here in Michigan, you have a rich history in pharmaceutical industry, in the healthcare industry. You've got fabulous academic institutions that do first-class research. So you've got a real future here in life sciences and medical innovation.
How did you get involved? Obviously, you have a long career in the United States House of Representatives as one of the major leaders during the last 3 decades. You have been a part of a lot of legislation that has taken place there. But how did you get involved in this specifically, particularly at this time? Because this is obviously not just a hot topic, but it's a topic that the entire country is talking about.
Well, there are really two reasons I got interested after I got out of public service in following this area. One was when I was in Congress, I worked with my colleague Newt Gingrich, who was my counterpart. He was the Republican leader. I was the Democratic leader in the House. We didn't agree on a lot, but one of the things we really did agree on was medical research. And so working together with our colleagues, we were able to increase funding for NIH university research from $15 to $30 billion a year. We did that 9 years ago. Unfortunately, it's been at steady state. It hasn't been increased since then, but that was a big leap forward, and we've seen a lot of results from that. So I was impressed by that. I thought that really worked, and I wanted to see if we could move it even further and make some of the other changes you need to make. The other reason I'm interested in all this is I have a son who in 1972 was diagnosed with terminal cancer at age 18 months. They gave him no hope, but doctors in St. Louis and Boston and other places came up with some therapies that had been invented through NIH university research that allowed him to live and survive. He's now 39 years old as of yesterday, and he's in business with me every day, and one of the things we work on is medical innovation because we understand at a gut level how important this is in people's lives.
When you bring it down to a personal experience and people start to get how medical innovation or how the healthcare systems have such a deep and personal impact on individuals, that's a conversation a lot of people can have. When it moves from that personal conversation to the spotlight of Washington, D.C., a place that you are so familiar with, a place where you had these same discussions. You had a lot of medical healthcare discussions when you were in Congress. Where does the disconnect come in? Because that conversation about your son is something that everybody watching this show can say, I understand that. But the healthcare debate in Washington is something that many people are very polarized over. And it's not the first time that healthcare has become polarized in this country.
Healthcare is a very personal issue for the reasons I just gave you. It's also very complicated. And there are a lot of different interests that are worried legitimately that healthcare reform will do them in or it will cause them great harm. So there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of emotion involved in this, and so it's very easy to get kind of bollocksed up and not able to do anything. My thought is that you can get some basic agreement between liberals and conservatives and independents and everybody in between on some pretty simple ideas. One of them is that medical care in America needs to be more cost efficient. It needs to have higher quality, and it needs to be more cost efficient. And the good news is that you can make changes in the system to make it more efficient and to save money and to increase quality at the same time. Let me just cite one example. Medicare in the last 6 years has done a study with 10,000 chronically ill Medicare patients. What they did is put them into managed care, and then they put telemetry in their homes, computers or phones, and did real-time testing of blood sugar and heart rate and all of that, had nurse practitioners on the phone with these folks trying to get them to eat right and take their meds and exercise if they could. These people normally cost $23,000 per head per year to Medicare. They saved $6,000 per year per head and increased the health status of these people because they kept them out of the hospital. They prevented worse problems from happening, kept them out of the doctor's office, kept them from having limbs cut off because of diabetes, increased their health status, and saved lots of money.
They saved 25%.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, who could be against this? This is good win-win-win policy. So that's the first problem we have, is that we aren't talking enough about where we can agree on things like managing chronic diseases more efficiently. Secondly, we can certainly talk about medical innovation. Who's against coming up with an answer to Alzheimer's? Who could be against coming up with better answers for managing heart disease or cancer or MS or any of these other things that we all fear and dread? That's an area where you can get real agreement. And today in the hearing we had here in Lansing, I think we heard a lot of agreement on what can be done.
Why doesn't that conversation take place? And again, I'm not asking you to weigh into Speaker Pelosi's motives or the president's motives, but just from a political standpoint, if you had that conversation, there would be people that would have some buy-in. But when the larger conversation is this broad, all-encompassing program that we've heard discussed, it really does make for an easier target for those who, as you say, are opposed, maybe for legitimate reasons.
I think the reason is that so often healthcare reform as an issue devolves quickly into who are we going to tax to pay for the uninsured. You know, we have 45 million people that don't have health insurance. If you use the analogy of driving a car, you can't get a license unless you have liability insurance as a driver. So we've always thought that it was important to do this. We also know that everybody is covered, even if you don't have health insurance, because you can go to the emergency room and get health care for free. So we're paying for it. So the question is, how do you organize it better so that everybody is covered and they get better, efficient health care? But when you get to that question, you get to a very tough political discussion, which is, who's going to pay for it? And we get into all the budgetary questions. We get into real ideological issues. Republicans don't think the government should be dealing with this at all. Some Democrats want a single payer system with the government running all of it, and then everything in between. So you very quickly get to a very emotional, ideological debate rather than focusing on some of these things where I think you can get easier agreement.
When you look at the broad picture, and I know both of us being native Missourians, I've known you for a long time, and just because you're not in Congress, I know full well you're paying very close attention to what's going on with this debate. Do you think it's likely, knowing what you know, that there will be some type of a health care reform, whether it has single payer, or today it seems more likely it won't have, but will there be some type of a bill that the president will have to deal with by the Thanksgiving deadline that some have talked about?
I think I'm optimistic. More than I've been in the past, that a bill will emerge from both houses and go to the president's desk. The timing would be more like the end of the year rather than Thanksgiving, but in that time period. And it'll be less of a bill than a lot of people want. but it'll be a very important step in the right direction.